Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Miguel back here on the Lights Out Podcast, and we're off on another deep dive. And Mike, I got a feeling that we're in Legends territory. Why don't you tell the people what we got coming?
Well, in the past, we had talked about a Mount Rushmore of American Jiu Jitsu. You know, the Americans that kind of figured it out, that gave the Brazilians a tough match every once in a while, at least in the beginning days. And Erik Paulson, he's front and center. He's front and center on our American Jiu Jitsu Mount Rushmore. And his first Shooto fight was 5 months before the UFC even existed.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. We're in pioneer territory. We're in, Legends territory. We're in old school territory. Whatever it is that you want to call it, Erik Paulson was there before you.
Before you, much before you. So Abu Dhabi Jiu Jitsu Pro is coming April 16th. You can register through SmoothComp. It's in Orlando, Florida. I am hosting it. April 8th, the week prior, I am in Bourbon Street. Friday, April 8th, I'm at 115 Bourbon Street in the south side of Chicago. Ignite FC is there. I am hosting that event, and I hope to see, some of our listeners there. I mean, our numbers keep going up. People are liking, sharing, and subscribing. The algorithms are 1,000% working against us. If you don't like, share, or subscribe, no one is going to hear this other than you, and it'd be greatly appreciated if you could help us out. No money, just a like, share, or subscribe. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Fantastic. Thank you for joining. All the love we've been getting. Appreciate it. Deep dive time, man. This is an awesome one, man. Not very often you get to come with a guy who's been around before me. I know I'm old, so you know what it is. It's good. So we got somebody who's been around before me, legendary coach, fighter, trainer, just done it all. Wealth and knowledge. Erik Paulson, how the hell you doing, brother?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it,
man. I mean, man, when did you start? I felt like I was a pioneer, but man, this is humbling. You were there before me, and just a legendary. Man, just the respect that your name commands with the people who actually know the sport is amazing. So how did you get involved in the sport?
Well, I started doing martial arts in 1974. I started in Judo, and I got in a street fight, which led me to karate. And then my dad bought us boxing gloves, my brother and I, who was a year older. So we got into some boxing matches in our basement. And my dad said, "You want to train a real martial art, train boxing." So I started coming home. I'm in 8th grade, and I love the arts. I love the mysticism of the arts. I love the traditional aspect. So while I was boxing at Golden Gloves, I was also still doing karate, which was Taekwondo, but it was sport. So it was all sparring. And then I was doing Aikido. There was an Aikido club at the same junior high school. So I started doing Aikido while I was doing Golden Gloves boxing and doing karate. At that time, I also wanted to get involved in an individual sport and quit playing sports that sometimes when you didn't play, you wouldn't get credit for, or if your team lost, you were the loser. So I told my dad when I was in 4th grade that I was done playing hockey, football, and baseball. And I wanted to do judo. So I started in judo, and then in 8th grade, I got into gymnastics. And I stuck with gymnastics all through. I fell in love with gymnastics because it was such a hard sport and just complete body control. So I started gymnastics in 8th grade, and then I continued all the way through high school. Was planning to go to UCLA for more gymnastics. And then I got into I was going to college in LA or Palm Desert. And I was going to move to LA, and I got involved in commercials. I was doing modeling and commercial work. And then I started getting involved in acting. And then I got hit on so much by so many guys that I said, you know, I think I kind of want to go into, hey, do guys get hit on in stunt work by other guys? And they go, no, it's pretty clear. And I go, oh, I think I want to do stunts. So I got involved in stunts. So I moved to Palm Desert. I moved to Palm Desert because my aunt was there and I could go to college to get my culture shock over, and it just made it worse. Because there's a lot of bisexual waiters and bartenders in the desert area. You know, and in the restaurant business, but predominantly in the Palm Springs area. So
maybe it was your ponytail.
I didn't have a ponytail then. I had short max headroom feathered hair, and I rode a motorcycle, and there was no helmet law. So I was tan with short feathered hair and a good tan.
That explains it.
So Chris, let me encapsulate just how old school Erik Paulson is. June 24th, 1993 is 5 months before the first UFC, and he fights in Shooto against KZ Factory, Kazuhiro Kusayanagi. He's got to fight 5 months before the UFC even has their first event.
I love it.
Now, wait. Erik, do you recall how you won that fight?
Yeah, reverse judo triangle. He shot a double. I underhooked him, and then I shot my knee in and stepped over his armpit, and then fell sideways, and he rolled back up, and I sealed my legs in a turtle position top, and he was on the bottom.
It was a la Toby Almeida and Jorge Masvidal, reverse triangle, 5 months before anybody in the United States even knew what a submission was.
Man,
for the most
now,
part.
When did you start training that aspect of it? I mean, I know you were talking about there, but how did you come from where you were before to get to here and even get to fight in Shooto? How did all that take place?
So when I moved to Palm Desert, I said I would like to get involved with Dan Inosanto under the Inosanto Academy and train under that lineage. Benny the Jet Urquidez, I went and trained at the Jet Center. And I kept driving by the academy on the way back home, and I would drive by, and they had a sign in the window that said "Shoot Wrestling," and then I had a picture of a guy punching, kicking, throwing, submission, all 4 aspects. And I go, wow, that looks interesting. And at that time, it was so in 1986, I started training. I started doing privates with Royce and Rickson Gracie in their garage.
Wow.
And then I got Higgin Machado. I got Higgin, Horian, and Royce, predominantly Royce. And then I said, I want to get more ground fighting and more ground, because he was teaching a lot of the self-defense system, which at first I don't think back then I appreciated as much as I do today. Because now there's a lot of guys that do jiu-jitsu that never got the self-defense aspect. But so I said, I want to get more ground. And my roommate got hooked up with Rickson. And he said, have you heard of Rickson? He's Royce's older brother. And I said, no. He goes, yeah, he just teaches all ground. I go, really? Well, I'd be interested to do a private with him just to check it out. So in 1988, I got to do my first private with Rickson, and all he would do is count backwards from 10. So he goes, so do you know a choke? And I go, yeah. He goes, all right, put your hooks in and put a choke on me. So I put it on, and then he just count from 10 back to 0. And by the time he's at 0, he's on my back choking me. So he goes, do you know an arm lock? And I go, yeah. He goes, show me. And I put an arm lock on him and Same thing. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He's arm locking me. And I was like, wow. He goes, it's like Christmas all over. Thank you for all the gifts. And just, he had no ego. He was very nice, but you could tell he was very menacing. He had a big neck. And Royce and I are the same age. And so it's Higgin, Royce, and I are the same age. So Royce, I used to bartend at a place called Sunsets down in Manhattan Beach. And Royce's ex-girlfriend was one of our daytime waitresses. And, you know, when you're getting swamped at the bar, everyone's waiting for drinks and you're busting your butt and you're running in circles. And you're overlooking the ocean. It was such a beautiful view there. And then Liz, her name was Liz, and she would say, hey, Erik, are you training with Royce today? I go, yeah, as soon as I'm done, I'm going over there for a private. So she'd call Royce and she'd say, hey, Royce, this is Liz. How are you? Yeah, Erik was talking shit today. He said he's going to kick your ass. Next thing you know, I go to Royce's and I go, hi, Royce, how are you? And he's like, put on the kimono. And I was like, why are you so angry? And he goes, put the kimono on. And all I remember was he taught me how to tap every way, with my feet, with my hands, with my fingertips, while I was mumbling, humming, because I couldn't breathe.
Saying no more.
No mas.
So anyways, I did a private with both of them. At the time, I was with Royce and Horian for a little over 2 years, and then I did a private with Rickson. And Royce said, how'd you like your private with my brother? And I said, I thought it was great. And he goes, well, what do you think? And I go, what I think is maybe I could do one private with you a week and one private with your brother a week. And he just said, you can't play on 2 football teams at once. I go, well, what are you talking about? Because both of your last names are Gracie and your brothers. Why? I'm not allowed to train with your brother.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, well, how do I get any better? He goes, take more private lessons.
Pay me more money.
But the thing is, it was $40 a half hour to roll with the best of the best.
Yeah.
Before anybody knew it, though. It's the best of the best.
1986, 1987, 88, 89, 1988, I saw my first Shooto poster, and I said, man, I got to try that out. So my roommate was a blue belt at the time. I went to the seminar, and I came home in my living room in Manhattan Beach, and he goes, hey, how was the seminar? I go, I learned some crazy things today, things I've never thought about or seen. I learned about 30 submissions. I learned striking, some throwing. And he goes, really? He goes, why don't you show me something? And I go, well, here's a pillow V arm lock from Kazuhiro, which is a head and arm. And you put the arm under the leg, and then you crank the head, and it's a shoulder and an elbow lock. He goes, wow, that's interesting. I've never seen that. And I go, yeah, it's cool. And then the next thing, from side control, it was like a kimura, but they call it a chicken wing. And I did a chicken wing to a spinning arm bar to a leg choke with my legs, choke with the legs. And he's like, wow. He goes, that's a great combo. And then he goes, what else? And I go, well, he showed us a bunch of leg locks. And he's like, leg locks? I go, yeah. You have an Achilles lock, a heel hook, a knee bar, and a toe. And I kept submitting him with all these leg attacks because he had no idea what I was doing. And then I go, well, this could be my secret. What I'm going to do is continue to go to Jiu Jitsu and silently, quietly go to Shooto, the shoot class at the Inosanto Academy, because they started a class in 1990. 1988 was a seminar. In 1990, they started, probably 89, early 90, they started the Shooto class. It was twice a week, Wednesday mornings and Saturdays. And man, it changed the entire complexion of all the Inosanto Academy guys, because everyone at the time was doing Silat, JKD trapping, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and it changed the complexion of everything, because now all these guys are starting to learn the shoot wrestling, and heavy emphasis on submissions. But the difference was they didn't work the transitions, positions, and escapes that jiu-jitsu had. So I thought, you know what a great combination. I could do secretly train in both and not say a word to either. Play each off in each place.
Hey, let me ask you. You talked about Jeet Kune Do and Dan Inosanto. Obviously, the Bruce Lee lineage. You're in the heady territory. You know, Gracies, the Gracie lineage, and you're right at the roots there. There were other people in California with interest, like Gene LeBell. Did Gene LeBell come upon your radar at any point here?
At that time, not yet.
Okay.
So a little bit later in the 90s, I had one of the guys I trained with, his name was John Donahue, and John Donahue is from Australia. He was a referee for Extreme Fighting.
He's a good friend of mine, actually.
Okay. Well, John Donahue was training with Gene LeBell in like the early 90s. And I trained with John when he was a blue belt at Mark Lyon's garage. Mark Lyon was a brown belt under the Machados, and he invited only a select handful of people to his garage to help everyone's jiu-jitsu get better and to roll. And so I started going there, and that's when he was talking more and more about Gene LeBell. And then I mentioned Gene LeBell to Guru Dan. He goes, "Oh, Gene LeBell taught Bruce Lee." And I'm great friends with Gene LeBell. And so right then we invited him over and we had a seminar at our school with Uncle Gene. And then I started seeing him at all the events, and he said, "You owe me 3 hours because you didn't cross-face the shit out of Paul Jones when you fought him. So you owe me 3 hours, and you didn't cut your hair, so you owe me 3 hours." So I had to give him 3 hours on the mat later on, which was cool because I realized that all the stuff he was showing, I already knew it because I learned it through Shooto, because our lineage was Carl Gotch, and Gene LeBell's lineage in catch wrestling was Carl Gotch.
Yeah.
And then obviously he had all the great judo stuff that he was doing too, and the pro wrestling, which again is catch wrestling. In the early stages of up to 1920, it was all catch wrestling. And then in 1930, it became show wrestling, where they started using acrobatics and acting, and everyone had a gimmick. And so interesting. And I asked Gene LeBell the other day, I called him just to check in with him and Midge, and I said, "Hi, how are you, sir? How's everything going?" And he said, "My most valued certificate that I have on my wall to this day is the sadistic bastard certificate that I got from Carl Gotch after I rolled with people." And he said, you are not going to get this certificate until you start hurting people. People, when they roll with you, they should never want to roll with you ever again.
Maybe that's where Josh and Hector Lombard got that's what they were doing. All right, so your second fight. So your first fight, to kind of wrap it up, it's in Shooto. Kazuhiro was a 14-fight veteran. You win in the third round, reverse triangle, or inverted triangle, I apologize. And I think he's, wasn't he a Satoru Sayama's representative from Shooto?
Yeah, he was first generation. He was a first generation Shooto guy. He was a judoka and a sambist. And he also was very experienced on the ground, and he had his own spats, which are tights with his name on it, and he had a belt in it, and they were red and white spats, and that was kind of intimidating to us when we went over there. All these guys had their professional spats, and we just bought some at Big Five down the road.
So let me kind of frame this for everybody. We had Ensign Inoue on. We talked about him taking over Tiger Mask's gym. This guy is associated with it. So the lineage of Tiger Mask's gym is it's incredibly historic. So that's June 24th, 1993, November 25th, 1993. You're back in Shooto, obviously, your first few fights. Naoki Sakuraba, a 15-fight veteran, future Shooto middleweight champion.
I fought him. So he came to America after I fought the owner of K's Factory. After I fought Kusayanagi, That was his name, Kusayanagi. So after I fought Kusayanagi, they send him over to America to come and train with us. So he comes to the Inosanto Academy. He's hanging out with me. I'm taking him to dinner. And all of a sudden he goes back to Japan. And he goes, I want to fight Erik Paulson. And I go, I thought we're friends.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, that's a compliment. And I go, that's not a compliment in America. It's an insult.
Yeah.
You don't fight your teammate. And they said, well, you're opposing forces. And he was just testing the waters and he wants to fight you. So I kind of got offended at that. That was a 5-round fight, and I broke my nose right before that fight. I'm sorry, I didn't break my training partner broke my nose. I said, hey, Michael, when we're training, just throw some punches light, and I'm just going to work, and I'm going to tie you up. I'm just going to work all my tie-ups and grabs and shoots and everything on you. I go, whatever you do, no knees. And all of a sudden I go to shoot, and I kept tying him up with singles and doubles and underhooks and body locks and head and arms. And I was just setting up stuff. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a bunch of people started walking in the gym, and he kept looking. He got excited. And then he starts punching, and all of a sudden I go to shoot, and he knees me right in the face. And my nose is over here. Right over here. And I go, don't tell Sensei Yuri that he just broke my nose. He's going to freak out. And then that's when I got in a huge argument with my coach. He said I was unprofessional. And I said, but you weren't even here watching my training. And how dare you say I'm unprofessional when you're off in downtown Tokyo selling Bruce Lee products? Because that's where he was. He's like the number one Bruce. He owns more Bruce Lee items than any other person on earth.
Wow.
That's frightening.
Like the Bruce Lee Museum, yeah, everything. Crazy.
Eric, let me ask you, Shooto's still in, they've been going for a few years, but it's still early in the game here. What kind of rules were you messing around with over there?
The rules, we weren't allowed to punch the face on the ground. So that was kind of interesting, because when you would get a mount on somebody, they would either do this and they would just sit like this, or they would put their hands behind their back and lay on their hands. It's funny, because I would roll with John Donahue sometimes, and he would do that in the garage, and I'm like, quit being a chicken shit. Pull your arms on, start engaging. Quit just hiding your arms. And then, so at that time, he would do that on purpose. But at the time, I was able to do privates with Rickson, so I'd go back to Rickson and I'd say, hey, sir, I'm having a problem. These guys are resisting. They're doing this, and they're hiding their arms. And he goes, well, when they hide their arms, he goes, here's a joke. So he showed a bread cutter, but his bread cutter starts at the chest and goes up, and he grabs your trap. So that was one thing. And the other thing, and he just showed it, is he would stay in the mount, and he would step a leg over your trapped arm. So he would grab your head and pin your wrist and put his leg over, and he'd grab your head, turn it sideways, and just neck crank the shit out of you until your arm would pop up, and then he'd armbar you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I created an entire series off of that he showed me from that private lesson. And that was the cool thing, is I could bounce all this stuff off of him and say, hey, I'm getting stuck in a few different areas here. These guys are hiding their arms. And it wasn't until like a couple years later, Satoru Sayama, the founder of Shooto, actually changed the rules and said, we're getting guys from all over the world that are fighting in Shooto internationally, and they can't handle the rules, because it was 5 3-minute round fight. It was a 5 3-minute round fight, and you only had 15 seconds at the longest on the ground. If you threw somebody, you had 15 seconds to submit them, or you're back up to your feet. And so guys couldn't handle those rules. So they said, okay, we need to change the rules. And I said, well, and he didn't ask the fighters, he just changed the rules. So he went from 5 3s to 3 5-minute rounds. And he started adding face punches. You weren't allowed to elbow on the ground. You were allowed to You could knee the ribs from side control and from turtle position. You could punch the face, just no elbows. And standing, you could knee. You could punch, no elbows. They just don't like, they thought the elbow caused a lot of blood, and they don't like blood in Japan.
Yeah.
But
Now, I have a question. I used to fight over in Japan in Pancrase, and
I saw that.
the crowd was always very educated. Was that at this time, were they still educated already, or that just came later? Or
It was the most silent crowd I ever went to.
So
so
bizarre.
odd. So
Silent. In fact, I was in the middle of in the ring, and this guy at the top of the arena at Korakuen Hall downtown Tokyo.
I fought there many times.
Yeah, it's great. I love it there.
Oregon Hall.
Korakuen Hall. So at the left corner of the building, this guy was sitting there in the rafters, and he farted, and then all of a sudden everyone goes, "Oh nada!" and everyone's laughing and clapping. But the only reason you could hear it is because they're so silent.
That's
But,
funny.
yeah, in fact, I remember I went back to Japan to train for a month, and they had Pancrase there like a week or two later. So you were fighting there. Were you fighting when they had the rope escape?
No, I came after that, but
Oh, wow.
I started there in 1999.
Okay, and they
I
changed
think
the
by
glove.
97, I think they stopped. They started those rope escapes. I remember.
Didn't you have you guys wore MMA gloves, right?
Not
Open
not
hand.
right away. They kind of transitioned into that. But I first started, I wore the big boots and all the nonsense,
wow.
open-handed strikes to the face, stuff like that.
Okay, so I remember it was open-handed, knee
Yep.
pads, shin guards.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and then they started transitioning, and then they said, we're going to wear Bruce Lee grabber gloves, the big old,
Yep.
and they wore those for like a year or so. And then they
Yep.
went back to empty hand, and then they actually got rid of the shin guards and the knee pads. And then they went to MMA gloves. And then I didn't really follow after that. Were you still there doing that with them?
No, after that, I was in the UFC. But I remember when they first transitioned to the gloves, it was really strange because they were trying to do some with the shin pads and no gloves, and some of the gloves it's like experiment. But I did a couple of fights like that, and you could headbutt. It was 1 15-minute round. If it went the distance, it was just a draw. I had like two fights in that.
You were allowed to headbutt in Japan?
And Pancrase, you could headbutt. Yeah, you got to look at some of my fights. Like a couple of them, you could headbutt. It was weird, man. They didn't know what they were doing. Like I said, there was 1 15-minute round. If it went there, it was a draw. But you could knee a guy to the head on the ground. You could soccer kick him. There was no real rules, and those they were still trying to figure it out.
I may have a little bit of insight on that, in that the end game for Pancrase, when they switched the rules, was to make Funaki versus Rickson. They wanted a specific NHB rule for that. They didn't want it to be under Pancrase rules. So I think that they did experiment with a bunch of stuff. I know Funaki's first full-out MMA fight was a guy I sent over, John Rankin. And
John the Saint.
yeah, and I mean, Rankin is like, he said, Funaki knocked me out twice. Yeah, in the fight.
Wow.
It was one of those, but I think it was, Funaki wanting a certain set of rules and for it to be rugged for his Rickson fight.
I didn't know
they kept it.
I didn't know you managed John.
I got him to fight. I know,
Cool.
he fought for us so many times, but it's like I was never an official manager.
John Rankin first came to me on a seminar in Minnesota, and I was teaching at Rick Faye's, and he came up. I was teaching a Shooto seminar, and he walks up to me, he goes, "I want to fight," and I go, "All right, let's go." He goes, "What?" He goes, no. I mean, I want to fight. Like, I want to fight someday. I was like, oh, your energy is way too strong. I go, you need to step back because I don't know what you got going on. And I was like, man, that guy's energy is so strong. And then I called up Greg Nelson, and I go, hey, Greg, I sent you a blonde-haired guy, kind of a crazy energy. And he goes, oh, you mean our local Satanist? And I was like, oh, boy. So he was involved in some of that stuff before Greg helped him get saved. You know, he told him, and then he opened up a church actually in Tennessee there. John Rankin came out and trained and everything. He's a great guy. And now he's a travel agent.
Yeah. Yeah, you're on top of shit, huh?
All right, here. Let me frame this up just a little bit. Sakuraba ended in a draw.
Oh, yeah.
How did you feel about the decision?
Because they changed the rules in the middle of the match. And then so I'm fighting 5 rounds with a broken nose. 5 rounds. And at the end of the fight, they gave me, because he challenged me. So I was a few pounds heavier than him, and they gave me a handicap glove, which meant they put a padding, an extra 1-inch padding into my glove, my Shooto glove. And I was like, this is stupid. First of all, you're challenging me. And then you go, oh, but you're heavier, so we need to put more padding in your glove. And then, so I'm fighting him, and round 1, his hand brushed across my nose, and I stood up. I go, I'm kickboxing the rest of the match. I hit him with a cow catcher when he shot in, and I spun to a front choke, a front headlock, and then the bell rang, and he brushed my nose, and then that's when I stood up. So anyways, at the end of the fight, I think I won that match. I was way more aggressive than he was. And what happened at the end of the match, they go, score 51-50. Bless you. and they go, draw. And I go, draw. 51-50 means I won. And they go, oh no, you must win by 2 points. And I was like, what is this, tennis? What are you talking about? And I go, draw. Okay. Well, to me, a draw doesn't feel like a victory. So anyways.
That's amazing.
They were really trying to get you beat as well, because your next opponent was 10-1-4, Kenji Kawajara from Shooting Gym Yokohama.
Kenji Kawaguchi. This guy won 6 years in a row at the jumping knee bar. So he would go jab cross, and he'd grab your head, and he'd start skip kneeing. And then when you'd lift your head up, he would overhook you and dive roll on your leg and hit a dive roll knee bar. Jumping dive roll knee bar. 6 years in a row. So I watched his tapes, and I had to create a solution to his victory. And I knew when I cracked him a couple times that he was going to grab my head and jump knee bar. And as soon as he hit a jump knee bar, it's called the Victor Nagi. As soon as he hit a Victor Nagi on me, which is a dive roll knee bar, I sprawled. I ended up right on top of him. I mounted him. I punched him, and then I hit an arm bar. And I hit I hit an arm bar, and I armbarred him, and he did not tap, and his arm popped. And and it was over my bottom hip, but I just wanted to straighten his arm out. And then after the fight, he came up, he goes, why didn't you break my arm? And I go, why didn't I break your arm? He goes, yeah. He said, in Japan, when you take someone's arm, you break it. And I said, well, I didn't break your arm because I knew I had to re-challenge you for the belt. And the only way I could fight you again is to fight you right away for the belt. If I break your arm, it's going to be a year layoff. That was my first victory. So it was a non-title match.
Yeah, it was non-title, and he's 10-1-4, absolute savage. So they're trying to flush you out of their system, it appears.
Right.
So they bring in a Dutch guy named Ben Spijkers, who's his debut fight, but he's a 1988 Olympic judo bronze medalist and a 1989 silver world's medalist.
Guy was tough as shit.
Wow.
He's fucking.
Hey,
there were some shenanigans in that fight.
Well, if there were some judo rules, I would have lost because he got the throw on me. But he thought he was done when he threw me, and he thought they were going to yell "Ippon," and I just go, keep fighting. You have to submit me. You can't just beat me with a throw. That's not how this works. And anyways, so
what about the ring that you fought in?
That was an octagon, and they took out the bottom 2 ropes and they put this mesh net around
like a baseball net, like to catch foul balls.
Horrible. And it was stretchy, and you you could go right through it. And I kept hitting him. I thought that was, I think, a 5-round fight. I kept hitting him, and he kept doing this, and he kept pushing his face away. And I said, do you want to fight or not? Because if you want to fight, you'll engage. You won't just turn your face away. He kept turning his face away, and I was punching, and I go, well, screw it. You don't want to fight? So I shoved his butt, and he did a flip over the rope and landed on the floor on his head.
He did it. You did it to him like 2 or 3 times.
Well, I flipped him over the ropes one time, and I didn't do it on purpose. I just go, if you don't want to fight, get out of the ring. So I just have to say, before the fight, they said, we're talking about flushing me out of the system. This judoka says, I am Ben Spijkers, one of his coaches here in Japan, and I want to invite you to my house for dinner. My wife and I want to invite you to dinner to our house and talk about judo before the fight. And I said, I don't usually, I usually hibernate until after the fight. So, and he goes, but we would really like to have you over, and we would really. So I was like, oh, well, he goes, it's an insult to say no. And I was like, well, okay. All right, I'll come over. So I walked 2 miles to his house, got to his house. His wife wasn't there. I'm like, well, where's your wife?
Did you get roofied? What happened?
I was like, oh, she's out of town. And I was like, oh. He goes, are you hungry? I go, oh, yes, sir. And he goes, well, I ordered pizza. I ordered 2 pizzas, huge pizzas.
Extra
and
sausage.
The night before my fight, and I'm like, I can't eat pizza before my fight. And he goes, I bet you're thirsty from cutting weight. And I go, oh, yeah, I'm always thirsty from cutting weight. And he goes, here, have a beer. Best thing for you is a beer. So I'm like,
you gotta get you beat, dude.
I can have half a beer. You can't have a half a beer in Japan because they keep refilling your glass. Right? Every time you drink a half a glass of beer, they fill it back up. I had 4 huge beers that night. I ate 2 pizzas predominantly by myself.
Yeah.
And now he goes, oh, do you know how to get back? And I go, no, and it's midnight. I'm going to get in trouble. So we're starting to walk back across the pasture. And then all of a sudden he goes, I said, what's your favorite throw? And he goes, it's Ippon Seonagi, but reverse Gaku Ippon Seonagi. And I go, oh, like what? And he goes, like this. And he grabs me and he goes to fake a Seonagi, like an arm throw. And I hip checked him, and then he spun the other way and he threw me in the grass. And I was like, oh, that's pretty tricky. That's pretty good. And he goes, but usually, and he grabs both of my wrists. He goes, now I usually just go 2-hand, and then he twists my arms, and then he threw me over his head. And I was like, well, now he's taking advantage of me. So all of a sudden I go, when he went to throw me again. I go, well, here's a problem with the drop Seonagi. I go, you get choked. And he goes, show me. And I go ahead and throw me. So he threw me, and I just wrapped him and I choked him. And so we started grappling in the grass. It's midnight. It's the night before my fight. And
the day before your fight. What do you do?
You got arrested. Yeah.
He goes to throw me again, and I choked him again. And then he's like, oh, good. Newaza, very strong. So he walks me. He goes, all right, there's your. I was staying at Ensign's gym at the Inosanto gym in Chiba.
And anyway.
Yeah, we used to stay at his gym, the Purebred gym, and we were staying there, and I had to tiptoe in, and I had to tiptoe past my coach's room, my teacher's room, and everybody, and I had grass stains. I had grass all over my knees. I had dirt all over my back, my elbows. I had grass and dirt in my and then I had pizza all around my face here. And then I had total beer breath because I drank 4 huge beers. And I go, man, I'm in so much trouble. I'm going to get my ass kicked tomorrow night. That was what they did to me before Ben Spijkers' fight.
Wow.
So it ended up being a 5-round fight. Burt Richardson was in my corner. Ron Balicki. I think
who was in his corner?
Remco Pardo.
And Gerard Gordeau.
Gerard Gordeau and Remco Pardo.
Yes.
Did Remco fight Carl Franks that night?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I used to have that one on video for that whole.
Did Carl Franks passed away, didn't he?
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
I heard. I don't know if it's true. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find something while Mike keeps talking here.
I know he was a massage therapist, and he had a massage table. He always carried a massage table with him. But anyways,
what happened with Ben Spijkers afterward? How was your relationship with the Shooto organization?
Well, so when I fought him, they said, because my two other teammates lost before I fought, and since a year he goes like this, Shooto, and he puts it on my back, and he goes, the hands of Shooto are in your hands. He said, you are in charge, and he goes, thank God you never lose. He goes, you always win. This is what he told me, and I was like, okay, I'll win. Yes, you have to defend the honor of Shooto versus Judo. And so, anyways, 5-round fight. I noticed he pulled his knee pads down below his knees, so when he kneed me, he cut me. But I punched him and kicked him, and he told everyone at World Combat Championship that he choked the hell out of me, which was a completely opposite, because I choked the hell out of him. And then he even said after the fight, he goes, please tell Erik Paulson when we meet again, I will choke the hell out of him.
Yeah, he was a guy with a bad attitude. He's the guy, for perspective, that Renzo Gracie had to step on his head. That's the famous.
Because he said he was gonna sleep with his wife after he beats him.
Yeah.
Jeez.
To Renzo Gracie.
Them's fighting
right.
words. You don't say that shit.
Yeah, that's not.
There's other things you can say, but you don't talk like that. And Renzo,
it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ben Spijkers said, hey, do you know if Renzo's coming out in a gi? And I go, hey, Renzo, are you coming out in a gi? He goes, of course. And then he got in the cage and he took his gi off. And then Ben Spijkers was like itching his head, like, what the hell?
Yeah, you could tell he. Okay, so here, they're in an octagon ring with no corner pads, with two of the bottom ropes missing, with baseball netting that's just kind of hung in there with like rubber bands. So it's like anytime you were like below the second rope, you were going outside that ring. Like it was so dangerous.
Yeah.
And Spijkers, I could see he was kind of a jerk. I mean, look, he's hanging out with Gordeau. I mean, you can't be a nice guy if you're hanging out with Gerard.
Well, you know what Gerard told me? Because we all went out and had beer later. He told me he was bragging about how many knuckles he put in Yuki Nakai's eye. He blinded Yuki Nakai, and he was bragging that he got up to his third knuckle.
Man.
No way.
Wow. That's
Yeah, he said, I was 3 knuckles in his eye socket. And I said, yeah, he ended his career. He could no longer fight MMA because of you doing that. He was dirty after he fought Royce. I was ringside for the fight, and after he fought Royce was walking back to his hotel room, and he goes, "Look how dirty this mofo is." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Look at my ear." And he bit his ear. Maybe that's where Tyson got the idea. I don't know.
Yeah, Gordeau, I was shocked. I mean, Miguel brings it up every once in a while as well. I was shocked that they allowed him to get away with that in Japan and return and not have any repercussions for that, because
tough, nasty fighter. You know, they said when I fought Ben Spijkers, when I pushed him and he went over the top, he came back in and he cut his chin. And when he came back in, I cracked him again, and then he grabbed me in a head and arm kubinagi and threw me with the head and arm. And when he landed, he was pinching my head so hard, he slid into the mount, and he put his damn chin right in my eye socket. It's called a chin choke in judo. They call it a chin choke. You can actually tap people out like that. But all I remember was tasting the blood, and it was dripping into my mouth, and I could taste his blood because his bloody chin was in my eye socket. So in order for me to get his chin out of my eye socket, which is completely illegal, I was pushing his face and my thumb kind of went into his eye, and they took a picture and it says, look how dirty Erik Paulson is. His fingers in Ben Spijkers' eye. I'm like, yeah, his bloody chin is in my eye socket. I had to get his chin out of my eye socket. People didn't know that. He was a dirty fighter.
You go on from there, Yasunari Okuda. You win by Americana in 44 seconds. And this is where we kind of wade into deep waters with you. The World Combat Championships. All right. How did you get involved with this event? This is a legendary event.
World Combat Championship. Chad Stahelski. Chad is now the director of John Wick and The Matrix. That's Chad. He was my training partner. Chad did all 4 Matrixes, and also all 4 John Wicks. Chad and I went up for a commercial because they said we need some mixed martial arts guys that could do punching, kicking, throwing, and submission for the commercial. So we both auditioned and we beat out Timac. You know Timac, Bruce Leroy? Mm-hmm. The goal. Yeah. So we beat Timac was up for our part, and we beat him out because our demo was spectacular. And then Chris Peters, John Peters' son, Chris Peters, says, hey, do either one of you guys fight? You guys look great out there doing all your demos. Either one of you fight? We both point at each other, and we just start laughing. I go, Chad fights. And Chad's like, Erik fights. I go, no, Chad does. Chad's a fighter. I go, I'm a stuntman. Chad's a fighter. And then he's like, Erik's a fighter. I'm a stuntman. I go, no, I'm an actor, and Chad's a fighter. So next thing you know, they go, would either one of you be interested to come in as an alternate in case one of the fighters pulled out? And I said, well, who's fighting in this event? And they go, Ben Spijker. And they go, Ben Spijker, Renzo Gracie, James Waring, Mike Bitonio, Bart Vale. There's some pretty good names on that card.
Sean McCully.
And then the guy, I don't even remember his name, I fought Sean. But Sean was tough too. I didn't understand the rules though. Like you're either a striker or a grappler, and then in the end they come together. I mean, I had Sean McCully in a triangle, and Cecil Peoples goes, no submissions.
Okay, here we go. So this tournament was done with 1/2 strikers, 1/2 grapplers.
Yeah.
So on the 1/2 striker side, you were not allowed to do submissions. And
you could get them into submission.
When you've got a guy like Cecil Peoples refereeing,
it's dangerous out there.
It's not only dangerous, like it's a traveling circus with no insurance or care or wherewithal of what's going on.
God rest Bob Wall's soul. He just died.
So your first. Okay, so it's 2 minutes on the ground. This is what. Okay, here we go. First match, Sean McCully. Cecil People brings you guys center cage, and he goes, first 2 minutes on the ground, no submission, except he's speaking like he's Japanese to Americans. No submission, first 2 minute on ground.
Like Steven Seagal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange
Japanese
thing.
English.
No submission on ground, 2 minutes. That's what he said. I mean, in essence. So you guys fight. Sean McCully's 8-0. He's a Muay Thai guy, 8 KOs. And, man, dude, it's not an easy fight for you. And it's even crazier when Cecil Peoples is trying to explain rules that don't make sense to anybody, including himself.
Right. And then they allowed the hair pulling to stay in. And the only
McCully pulled your hair first.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was training against head punches in my garage. I put a face saver, a ringside face saver on, and we were punching and elbowing each other, no problem. But when my hair got pulled, he grabbed my hair and pulled my head back. It just changed the entire complexion of grappling because your head's back.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect I didn't expect that. And then the 2 minutes of that, I got cut on both sides. I got 2 horns right here. From getting headbutted and elbowed. I got headbutted and then I got elbowed. And, it's weird having 2 cuts. After that fight, they sewed both of my cuts up. They sewed them. And then at the end of after I fought James Waring.
Wait. They sewed you up. They sewed you up after McCully. You went, knocked him out 5 minutes, 17 seconds. They sewed you up and then they sent you in against James Waring?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
James Waring his hand.
Wait, before we get down the road, you're also representing June Fan.
That was what they billed me as, is Jun Fan. JKD, Bruce Lee. It's weird.
Did you get thrown out of Rickson's gym when you entered this tournament, or was it after?
Right after. Hold on. I asked Master Rickson Gracie and his wife, Kim, would you guys have a problem if I'm going in as an alternate in this fight? I may or may not fight. The odds, they said, are very slim. But if I do have to fight and I get to the grand final and I have to fight Renzo, I will take a bye on the fight as long as I can continue to train with you. Is that cool? Oh, that would be great. No problem. That'd be great. Well, I never got there because I got my hair pulled for 18 minutes on national TV. So I didn't get to fight Renzo. But all the guys in the school were speculating what would have happened if Erik would have fought Renzo. It doesn't hold up in a court of law. It's called speculation. All these guys are speculating what would have happened if I would have fought Renzo. Well, I didn't fight Renzo. So how about that one? And right afterwards, Rickson rode up on his bicycle and he said, so now that you're a pro fighter, you might end up fighting one of my guys or maybe a cousin. And so maybe it's not a good idea I train you anymore. And I go, but I've been fighting professionally in Japan for the last 6 or 7 years, 5 years, 6 years. Why suddenly, because I fought in a cage fight that I fought in stupid rules, and why suddenly are you kicking me out of the school? And it was all the students were talking crap. That's why he listened to the students.
And that's crazy because at the end of the day, Renzo went home with the big check, and
exactly.
He's got nothing to complain about. And Renzo wouldn't really complain.
I made James Waring so tired from that fight. He didn't even want to go back in there and fight again.
All right. So in the beginning, I said Cecil Peoples with Justin McCully centering, 2 minute, no submission. I mean, that's his on ground. I mean, that's Cecil Peoples. With James Waring, Cecil Peoples said first 2 minutes, no choking or grappling. Now there was no grappling involved. 10 minutes in, he's yelling at you not to choke James Waring when you're on top. Erik, when was the last time you watched that fight?
Well, it's a tough one to watch because a lot of my friends got sick when they were watching me get my hair pulled and up against. He had casts. He had casts on his hands. I don't know how the commission signed his hands off. I had a piece of tape wrapped around my knuckles. He had a full-on hand wrap, boxer's hand wrap, which was signed off by the commission. So obviously the boxing commission, he knew the boxing commission. And I know that James Waring was trained by Harold Diamond at that time. Harold Diamond was Harold Diamond, right?
I'm not familiar.
He was in Rambo 3. He's the guy that fought Stallone in Rambo 3, the stick fight in the beginning.
Okay.
That's Harold Diamond. He was an unbelievable Muay Thai trainer in the marina at that time, and he was training James Waring.
Do you think he had plaster in his hand wraps?
Well, I saw his hand bounce off Jerome Turkan. I thought I was going to fight Jerome Turkan because he was a Sabat Muay Thai guy. And when he barely clipped him with his hand, he went down. I wouldn't think that he would put the plaster. And he got him signed up. But, I mean, his hands look like they look like they were casts. That's how wrapped they were. It looked like Stitch's hand wrap job.
It almost as if All right. So the rumor was that he had Plaster in there. I kind of like from my perspective.
That would explain. Every time you hit me, I'd feel a shock, like a major, like holy crap.
Yeah, but when you load up on tape and there's sweat involved, it also acts like you said a cast.
Becomes plaster.
Yeah. It casts like a lot of tape will do the exact same thing. So James Waring, Eric, I watched it again. I watched it live. I watched it again. It's one of the most brutal things I have ever seen in fighting in my entire life. I can't imagine how your head felt afterward.
I had the cuts. They were so swollen after I was done fighting, the stitches disappeared and my cuts healed. Can you believe that? My cuts they went like this and they healed, they sealed shut. I go, hey, what happened to my cuts? So my cuts disappeared. And another thing, I got hit up here with an elbow or something, and it bled all the way down into my ear. And I had a black ear for 2 months. We kneed each other in the nuts so many times. When he first kneed me, I heard a split. And then he kept kneeing me, and I kept kneeing him and stomping his feet and kneeing the nuts and kneeing and stomping. I let his hand go. His hand almost went through my head. I had to fight for his hand again, and we were fighting, and I had to press him into the cage because I knew if I was back on the cage, he could have really hurt me with his hand. So I had to keep the pressure. My head was back the whole time. So imagine putting your head backwards and trying to pull your head forward when you're getting your hair pulled. So there's no power, and then we started just kneeing each other in the balls. And after the fight, I in the locker room, I go, hey, watch, you guys want to see something? And I pulled my cup out, and it was dented. It had a dent like this big, and it was split in half. I go, damn, Japanese cups are weak as crap. And then a month later, I had a cup bruise around my whole groin area.
Here, do you think James Waring made weight?
Well, that was an open weight tournament, no?
Was it open weight? Because they are nowhere near the same size.
Yeah, Bart Vale was big.
Yeah, Vale was big.
Yeah, I think he was 240. I think it was 240. I was 185 or 187 or something like that. 190. I don't know.
What did you get paid for that?
For two fights. For both those fights. Chris Peters goes, how does $1,500 sound? And I go, $1,500 for those two fights? $1,500.
Man.
That's what Chris Peters paid me, $1,500 to fight Sean McCully and James Waring back to back.
You guys didn't have a contract, did you?
I don't remember. All I remember is if I would have beat James Waring, it would have been $32,000, and if you would have won the whole thing, it was $132,000.
Oh, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
Why didn't you cut your hair?
I had a movie a week after. I had a movie called Sinbad, and we were shooting it in Morocco. And I was playing a long-haired Viking, and I had to ride a horse and all this stuff. And they said, you have to have long hair. I go, you could just wig me. They go, well, it doesn't look right. So we just you got the part because of your hair. And then the movie got pushed. So I'm coming back, and I'm like, God. So here I kept my hair long. The movie gets pushed. Oh, and I did try to get my hair cornrowed. How does nobody know how to cornrow hair in the South? That's what I don't get.
Eric, so you make $1,500 for the two fights. Obviously, there's no contract. You get kicked out of your gym. The movie gets pushed back.
Yeah, so the movie, I lose a movie part, and then now I have to, I get a call, and they said, hey, do you have any long-haired guys that can rollerblade? So I go, I can play hockey and rollerblade. And they go, okay, we'll use you on Baywatch. So I got instead of going to Morocco, I got a small part on Baywatch. I was the lead bad guy. And I had to cross-check a Canadian guy off its feet over my head. that paid $8,000, but so now I'm what 95 compared to whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, it's still less than 32,000.
Yeah.
Hey,
And then,
let me go ahead.
well, Miguel, when you're doing Bodog, you gave me a nice offer, and we were talking about the offer that you gave me, and it was like 80 grand for 3 fights. And then you were talking about me commentating afterwards, and I was all excited. And then when you left, the new owners of Bodog said, what was your offer? And I go, it was $80,000 for 3 fights and a commentary job. And they go, now who gave you that? And I go, it was Miguel. We were talking about it in the hotel room. That's why we wrestled. And then he said, well, so the guy goes, you need to come down here and meet with us and tell us why we should ever pay someone your age $80,000 for 3 fights.
Oh, who said this to you?
The guys that took over Bodog after you left.
Yeah, it's 20-something thousand a fight, so it really isn't that much, and I'm getting a legend, so it's like, anyway, Bodog didn't last much longer after that, so
they went under, and that was sad, because I thought for sure I was coming out of a new fight. I thought for sure I could have a new fight career.
Man, I know I let Josh down too, so.
What's that?
I know I let Josh down too, and like at the end there, it was tough because you got to keep negotiating with people, but you kind of see the end coming, and you don't know. There was a point where I was chopped off at the knees, and I could no longer make any promises, like a contract like that. If your backers aren't going to honor it, it was going to be trouble. So anyway, I apologize for that, Eric. But let's take it back to the Waring fight, because I know more than anything that you are also a historian and cerebral about this game. Like, do you look back at that fight and feel like, okay, at least the rule got in place that there's no hair pulling, or are you
could have got scalped?
Like that one and the Hackney fight where he blasted Joe San in the balls are 2 fights that you can point to and say those fights led to rule changes. Like, does that make you feel at least some justification? How does that make you feel?
Well, it was, for me, I'm like, first of all, you're bigger than me. Why would you have to resort to pulling my hair to that's a desperate move. And to sit there and hold my hair the whole time, I just kept saying, hey, let my hair go. Just let it go. Let's just fight. Just let my hair go. And he would laugh. He would like kind of, and then he just didn't want to let my hair go. Once he got his fingers locked in, it was locked into my.
What was holding your hair together? Like, whoever put whatever it was in your hair to kind of keep it in a ponytail. Holy shit! What was that?
So I pulled all my hair back, and I put a ponytail. I put a tight rubber band next to the head, and then I put another one down, and another one down, and another one down. So I had 4, and then I wrapped the ponytail up, and then I put a rubber band around the whole thing. So I had a space bun. I was walking around with a space bun. Just remember swearing. I was so angry because I was so angry that nobody could do cornrow my hair. And I was so angry, and I go, Chad goes, let's go get a massage. So I go, all right, I'll get a massage. I'll get a nice massage just so I could relax, because I'm kind of angry. And so we went to get a massage, and all of a sudden we're both in this little massage place in North Carolina. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, why are we both sitting in a sauna next to each other? We're the only ones in here. Why are we both in a sauna at the same time? And I was like, you know what? They're going through our wallets. So I went back into my room. I go back into my room, and next thing you know, there's $60 in my wallet. They took all my per diem and everything out of my wallet. I only had $60. One of the secrets of stealing is you don't take all the money. You just take pieces, part of the money, and leave a little bit, so you question what you did. So the girl took all my money. So I went completely haywire, and I grabbed I had the oil and I had the baby powder, and and there was oil and baby powder, and I was yelling. I'm like, give me my money back. And the lady goes, oh, your friend, he's crazy, to Chad. And Chad was like, well, I want to finish my massage. So I had to go sit outside because they kicked me out. Now I'm double angry. I didn't get cornrowed hair, and I didn't get my massage.
You know, at that point, you don't go to the casino boat. You don't, you got to be very careful what you eat. You're just having bad luck.
Yeah.
Did you ever talk to James after this?
I saw him limping through the airport, and then when I saw him walking, he was limping. He looked at me, and he started walking normal, and I was like, no, you should be limping. I stomped your foot and kneed your balls pretty hard and kneed your leg pretty hard.
You never saw him after that, though. That was it, huh?
No, but I know Harold Diamond was training. I talked to Harold just the other day, and he's in Thailand, and he said that was his guy. And I'm like, oh, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for training him. The other thing with James Waring, he was a WBO cruiserweight champion.
Oh, yeah. No, he was legit.
He had a 23-second knockout. That guy had like super heavy hands.
Yeah, I don't know. You mentioned too that the commission had signed off on it. He later was an active member of the Florida Boxing Commission. He reffed MMA. He was one of the first refs they put in MMA, and I as a promoter asked to not have him ref. He was horrible as a ref in MMA. But like a little bit of that arrogance came across. So he was not even apologetic or anything to you afterwards.
He actually was yelling at me. Actually, after the whole thing was over and Renzo won, Renzo came up to me and he thanked me. He said, thank you for tiring him out. He goes, my fight was as easy as it was with him because you got him so tired. And he goes, I'm glad that you and I didn't have to fight. He goes, that would have been a fun fight. He said, but, you got him tired, and I figured I'd just shoot on him from across the cage, which is what he did. He shot from 25 feet away.
I think Renzo, like out of all the Gracies, Renzo's my favorite.
He's such a nice guy. He's always happy, laughing.
Not afraid of competition. Yeah.
No. In fact,
welcomes it.
Yeah, he emulates that. That's why all of his guys compete regularly.
Hey, can I ask you one more question about that night? You mentioned the Bart Vale and Mike Bitonio fight. Were you able to watch that? Like, yes. Talk about that live and what that was, because that was one of the most memorable fights from that show too.
Locker room. Bart Vale was walking around. I go, man, he's huge. And they're like, he's a shoot fighter. And I go, so am I. And they're like, well, yeah, but he's a heavyweight and he does this. And they're like, and then Ben Spijkers said that. I said, who's in this event? And they go, Ben Spijker. And I go, oh, I just fought him in Japan a week ago. And then Bob Wall from Enter the Dragon, Bob Wall, he said, yeah, Ben Spijker said he choked the hell out of you. And I go, no, it's actually the other way around. And he goes, yeah, I don't believe that. And so I had to bring magazines in from Japan to show everybody that I beat Ben.
Like 2 months later. About 2 months later.
But, man, that guy had such a strong back and his grip and everything. I mean, he would be a terror on the mat just by grappling alone, I'm sure.
He wanted a way out of your fight, though. Like, he was using the ropes to kind of get away, from you, ducking under him. He was gassing when you threw him out. He was walking real slow. And then, like, if the stairs were right there, he had a very high IQ. Because normally a guy would just walk to the stairs. Instead, he walks the long way to kind of go over to the other side.
Yeah, he took his time to get back up there. And, it's funny. Oh, yeah, after the fight, I go to Burt Richardson and Sensei Yuri and Ron Balicki. I go, hey, how come you guys weren't talking to me between rounds? I think, what are you talking about? We were yelling at you the whole time. And I go, oh, must have been the 4 beers and the pizza the night before.
So with Waring, all right, so people can kind of really grasp what took place. The fight ended at 16 minutes and 8 seconds. Your corner stopped it. Smart on their end. The amount of hair pulling and wearing's like, I think after that he couldn't open up his hands.
Yes, his hand was crampy.
Because they were so like enmeshed in Erik's hair.
Casted up with a handful of hair.
Were you able to even put your head on a pillow for a while?
I had these muscles were so sore. I remember these muscles were so sore. What are they called? Your scalenes? My scalenes. I was like, I could barely lift my head forward from that fight because my head was back the whole time.
Man, that was horrible. I mean, it was hard for me to watch. I watched the whole thing and it was not easy.
My roommate was in the other room crying and puking because everyone was watching the fight. They thought it was going to be a good fight. And he was like, oh my gosh. He goes, I can't handle it. And he's like, oh, it's horrible. I can't believe my roommate's getting beat up. And he's like, bleh.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like you could see, like you got, it almost is like you got scalped. Like it was friggin' brutal, man. All right. So Mad Hume, obviously a friend of yours, as well as somebody you fight later on down the line. We are of the forethought that Mad Hume is kind of like an evil genius. Like his understanding of mixed martial arts and combat sports is light years ahead of most people. And my conspiracy theory is that he sent Todd, was it Bjornethun, which is your next bout, January 20th, 1996. It's somebody that it's Matt Hume's student, high-end stand-up guy. Do you think he set that fight up just so he could kind of watch you and to kind of set forth a game plan to see if it would work when you two would fight in the future?
He downloaded all my stuff from that fight. And you can't, like, when you fight Todd Bjornethun, he's so wild. You just look like shit the whole time. You can't be a composed fighter against that guy because his head's all over the place and he's wailing overhands. And then the next thing he's shooting and then he's on your legs. And he downloaded a lot of information. And then
Miguel, it's like the turn of the century fighter Abe Attell and his brother, Abe Attell, world champion. He would have his brother fight potential contenders, corner his brother, watch how it went down, and then he would fight him a couple weeks or a month later. Yeah, wow. It's kind of what Mad Hume did to you.
Yeah, I did. Well, yeah, he was studying because I was the champion of Shooto.
Well, not yet.
A lot of the Pancrase guys, well, in 96 I was, but I fought him in, when did I fight Matt? In 90.
You fought him in 96, but here, you get a rematch, Shooto title fight, May 7th, 1996. Kenji Kawaguchi for the Shooto light heavyweight tournament. If I have to ask you a controversial question, do you think that the first match between you two wasn't a title fight because you were a foreigner?
They said I wasn't a number one contender yet.
Do you think your race had anything to do with that?
Of course. And the fact that I had blonde hair and blue eyes. They wanted Chad Stahelski. Chad looked like Brandon Lee. They said he would have been the perfect champion. But they had a blonde hair, blue-eyed guy from America that they never thought that I was going to win. They thought for sure right off the bat that Chad was going to beat everybody and that I was going to lose. And then when I fought and I won, they go, that was a coinky-dink. And then I fought and won again, or drew, and they're like, And then I beat 5 champions before I was ever given a chance to fight for the belt. They made me fight 5 guys to prove myself.
I think there's some racism involved with that too.
Well, yeah, because
the Japanese are notorious for.
They said the big 4. No, there's 5 champions. There's 5 champions, and they're advertising the big 4. They're advertising Ensign, Mach Sakurai, Rumina Sato, and Asahi was one. So it was Asahi. Yuki Nakai was a champion also, but Asahi, Mach Sakurai, Inosanto was not even at that time
Not yet.
a champion, and they were still billing him as the big four. And I'm like, it's big five, but they wouldn't not put me in their list of champions. All the pictures of the four guys and not me. They were trying to get me out the whole time.
Yeah,
And I remember when they gave me my last offer. That's why I fought in Super Brawl. I fought in Super Brawl because when I had my second title defense, I said, listen, I've already beat him. I want $5,000 to fight and $1,000 to win. That's not asking too much. And they said, oh, that is disrespectful. You're asking for too much. And I go, oh, I'm in the prime of my career. And no, that was when I fought. Yeah, that wasn't when I fought Kawaguchi. It was when I fought Suda in 1988. In 1988, I asked for $6,000, and they said I was disrespectful, and I had to send a letter back to Japan.
98.
Yeah, you fought Suda in 98.
Sorry, yeah, 98. Sorry, did I say 88?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah,
myself.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I remember I was at a Shooto show that they took you over. You were over there, and you weren't fighting. You were kind of brought over as a guest. And I think they were trying to set you up for another fight, and it sort of never happened. Is that, part of it? Like, why bring you over and then not make the fight happen? It just doesn't make sense.
That was them. They wanted me out, and they said, if you're going to fight, you can only fight in Hawaii. You can only fight in America. And the only two sanctioned fights in America was hook and shoot, right? And Super Brawl. Those are the only two Shooto sanctioned fights. And I said, well, so you want me to fight in Super Brawl or hook and shoot? And they go, yeah. And they go, we want you to become famous in America. You're already famous in Japan. And I go, well, I might as well quit fighting because those two events pay $500 to $1,000 a fight. So my pay scale just went, like completely backwards. That doesn't make sense. And that's why I retired.
I'll go change oil. Yeah. Well, here,
That's incredible.
So
they bring you over to Japan to tell you you're going. Wow.
Hold up. Let's talk about your world title fight. Kawaguchi. Why don't you walk us through it? Because it's pretty amazing.
Well, Kawaguchi, this is the second time I had to fight him. And him and I fought him 2 years before. So he was complaining. He said, I have a family and I have a job, a 9-to-5 job. Erik's a professional fighter. He can train all the time. And I go, I'm a professional bartender that fights once a year. That's what I am. And I said, I have 2 bartending jobs. I hustle my ass off to make money. I teach privates and intensives, and I do movie work. I do whatever I can possibly get to pay rent. And even then, working 2 bartending jobs, and I'm still trying to, wrap my head around how the fact that I can barely pay rent. Barely pay rent with two great bartending jobs. I worked at Sunsets and I worked at St. Mark's, and these were 2 great places, and I was there for 8 to 10 years. But it's so funny because he was saying that I could train all the time, and I said I train every day because I make time to train every day, whether it's morning or night. I run every day. I run on the beach. I was training all the time. So he was using that as an excuse, but I said, listen, the longer you wait between fights, the more I'm going to beat you. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, I'm going to hurt you because you're dodging me for 2 years. You're dodging me. If we're going to fight for the belt, we need to fight for the belt. So they finally gave me the belt, the title match, and we went in, and it was a great fight. That was a really fun fight.
How did it end?
I had Kawaguchi in a knee bar. I spun to a straight knee bar. I looked at him and I knew that he wasn't going to tap. And I'm looking at his leg going, he's not going to tap. He's going to let it break. So I grabbed his toes this way. Normally the toe hold is this way. I grabbed this way and I went like this, and I twisted his foot backwards. So I twisted his foot to the outside, and his knee exploded, and he screamed and tapped, and the ref stopped the fight. And that was how I beat him. That was how I beat Kenji Kawaguchi.
So you chose between the leg and the knee, and you took his knee.
Well, it was a knee bar, but I knew he wasn't going to tap to the knee bar, and to break someone's knee like that is brutal. Okay. Your knee bends back. Your knee breaks backwards. So what I did is I just grabbed his toes and I spun his toes all the way backwards, and by doing that, his foot twisted outside and his knee made a loud clicking, like a pop. And he yelled, and then the ref stopped it, and that was it. That's how I beat Kenji Kawaguchi.
And what was the conversations like with the Shooto organization after this took place?
Well, they would talk to Sensei Yuri, but I never really got to talk to him. I just got to talk to Yuri and Satoru Sayama, which was cool because I got to just hang out. You know, there was actually a restaurant it was called Inosanto Health Center, and we would go back and have some sushi and some food and some beer, and it was nice. You know, a lot of times I wasn't even allowed to have a beer after my fight if I got hit in the head because of slight possible concussion. If you have a concussion, you're not supposed to drink beer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So October 18th, 1996, you decide to take a fight outside of the Shooto organization at Battlecade Extreme Fighting, John Peretti's organization, I believe, against Matt Hume, you know, somebody we had talked about earlier. How was your relationship with John Peretti?
He called me. He was a Gene LeBell black belt with John Donahue. And I don't know, for some reason, I think because I fought in Japan and because I was training another grappling organization on top of training with the Machados and the Gracies, I think those guys are kind of, he wanted to see me lose. I think he thought I was a hot shot. That's what I think. I think he thought I was a hot shot because I heard what he told Matt. He's like, kick Erik's ass. Anyone that wouldn't cut their hair for a fight, you know, you should kick his ass. He was playing us off on each other. But I heard him talk to Matt, you know, and, you know, I could have finished that fight. You know, who stopped the fight was John Donahue, stopped that fight. And I didn't even know I had a cut on my head. And he goes, oh, I can see your scalp. And I go, slap some Vaseline in it. Let me finish the fight. And they go, oh, no. Oh, you can see your scalp. If it cuts open bigger, it's going to be worse. And I go, so what? That's you sew it up after.
Was it that bad? Was the cut that bad?
It was 1 inch. It was a 1 inch cut.
Okay.
There's no reason they should have stopped that fight. There is not a reason. What's that?
Right there. All right. So in my notes, I watched this thing. There wasn't even a lot of blood coming out of it.
You're right.
Before the doctor, first off, you and Matt are going at it. I tried to post this thing on Reddit and they almost kicked me out of a community because I didn't have enough, I don't know, letters in my friggin' title. I'm a dinosaur. I don't know how to post anywhere. So I tried to post this fight on there. Battle of Two Masters. If you watch this, it's hard to understand that this fight took place in 1996 because it's so fluid, the movements between the two of you. This absolutely could have been a modern day fight. It was way many years ahead of its time. And Matt Hume is announced 225-18.
Yeah, where did that number come from? That comes from wrestling. You know, here's the thing. I got to say this. So some of these guys accumulate their grappling matches and they call them fights. Those aren't fights. Those are grappling matches. Like, for instance, Rickson is 400-0, right? That's his record. Guess whose record is 400-0 also? Go Course. Come on. You've had 400 fights. No, you haven't.
Right.
You know, and then to say, oh, it's 400 street fights. Well, so you're telling me you count your street fights? That's why I started something called gymwins.com. And every time you grapple in your gym, you get a
You register?
Yeah, you have to sign in and go, yeah, I got 3 wins tonight.
It's $1 per entry.
Gymwins.com.
It makes it official, you know.
Matt said he was 280, and I'm like, what is he counting? Fighting, wrestling is not fighting, just to let you know.
Okay, so I want to say this the most respectful way I can, and it's not even towards you. I'm a huge Matt Hume fan.
I love Matt Hume.
Oh, dude, I love Matt Hume. Okay, so let me just, you heard the inflection in my voice there. When I look at Matt Hume's record, it's dude, all right. I went down this Matt Hume rabbit hole, hoping that his losses were fake fights. I'm like, there's no way that Matt Hume could have lost to some of these lower end guys. And the fights look real to me, man. Like I went on like an MMA detective, just friggin' rabbit hole. And I couldn't prove it, but my heart hoped that they were fake fights.
You know, some of the early Pancrase fights were not predetermined, but they weren't all 100% real.
Of course, obviously.
But, you know,
we had Bas Rutten on his 3rd fight against the Pancrase owner. I mean, I didn't want to press the issue, but his reaction during it kind of told me, you know, it may have been a little funny, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
I just want to say this. In Japan, the only real fights at that time were Shooto. The reason I was not allowed to go to rings, the reason I wasn't allowed to go to Pancrase or UWF or even Pride at that time was because they said that some of the fights aren't real. Not all, because how could you tell if a fight was or wasn't real if you just mix them up?
Well, we had Mark Schultz on, and Mark Schultz even mentioned like one of his fights. Inaki brought him in for a fake fight, and during the fake fight, the guy grabbed a submission, and all of a sudden, it's a real fight. It's like, well, wait a minute, you know,
That's true.
That's all those games that were played. So Matt Hume, it shocked me to see that his stand-up was so good against yourself.
You had good striking and clinching. That's our whole match was a striking and clinching match almost. And then when we
went to the ground, it was shocking to me to see you take the mount so easily.
Well, because they don't care about the guard. I mean, Josh is the same way. He's like, he just opens his legs. And first time I ever rolled with Josh, he opened his legs. I go, so you're not going to do any type of guard? He goes, why? What does it matter? And I go, all right. So I jumped through his guard and went to put a fat man choke on him, head and arm Kazugatami. And Shannon was so mad. Boy, she was so angry. And I was like, well, that's what do you expect when you don't acknowledge? You have to have a guard. You have to have a guard. And I'm rolling with guys they're all really great at the guard. And the other thing is if your legs are just flopping open, that's when people attack them. But what I would like to say is when I got mount on Matt, we had lunch before that match, and I held back from just punching his face in because that's why I was slapping him in the back of the head. Did you see? You could see me. I was just slapping the back of the head.
You did it a few times. Why?
Yeah, because, well, when you slap your occipital, slap the back of your neck. Slap the back of your neck 3 times.
What happens?
Just do it.
I'm a big fat guy, bro.
It shocks you. So, like, it shocks the shit out of me. So I was training in Collie, with the Dog brothers, and they were slapping each other in the back of the neck. And I was like, do you guys actually get knockouts from that? And they're like, well, sometimes. And I was like, anyways, the reason I didn't try to put my elbow through Matt's face or punch him as hard as I could was because we had lunch, and I was like, I kind of didn't want to punch his face in. I just wanted to beat him technically, with a submission or something. But
you think that was part of his game plan?
What, to go to lunch with me?
Man, Matt Hume, he's an evil genius. He's a genius.
You dissolve a situation when you go to lunch, and I'm sitting across from him. I go, hey, Matt, are you going to come out with striking, or are you going to try to grapple and shoot right away? And he goes, both. And I go, good answer. All right. Chad's sitting next to me just going, I can't believe we're eating lunch with these guys. In 1 hour,
you're in your corner.
Chad Stahelski.
Who was the Asian guy?
I had Tanaka. Tanaka was he was the lightweight Shooto champion.
Yeah.
He also punched me before the fight. He punched me in the eye with the corner of the tie pad, and I went, ah! And then I went, oh. I shot my wad in the back before I walked out for that fight. I got so angry because he punched me in the eye with a tie pad.
It was, I don't know. It's a crazy fight. And what I think the most upsetting thing is, as an MMA fan, is to watch this work of art, because you've got two absolute geniuses playing Rubik's Cube with each other. You get a cut on your forehead, and before the doctor even gets to open it up and play with it, oh, no, we got to stop it.
Well, that was half John Donahue too. He's like, oh, it's bad, buddy. And I was like,
yeah, I heard the referee say that as well.
Hey,
yeah,
just let me finish the fight. I even said, I don't even know that I'm cut. Just let me finish the fight. Put some Vaseline and let me finish the fight. I'm winning. Let me finish the fight. And they go, no, that's it. We're going to have to call it. And so they tried to get us. Well, they tried to get us to fight again in Japan. And Matt said, I want to fight for Erik's belt, or I want $10,000. And they go, no and no.
Well, why would they just put a belt on it? Because
exactly. I don't. Hey, if he's challenging the belt, they said, oh, he's not a contender. He comes from Pancrase. You can't cross. That'd be like me going there and challenging their champion. You can't do that. They don't allow that. There were sticklers with jumping leagues. Yeah, they even told me, they said, you can't. I go, hey, why can't I fight some of the Pancrase guys? And they go, you can't train or fight other guys from other leagues. And I go, why? And they go, because your official Shooto fighters fight official fighters. And so I got, after I retired in 2000, I had Howard Liu talk to Pride, and I got a phone call. They wanted me to fight Dan Henderson or Shoji. And I was like, yeah, of course. I'd love to do that. I can finally make some money too. I get a call at 8 a.m. and Yuri's blowing my phone up. I answer the phone. He goes, Eriku, I hear you are trying to take a fight in Pride. And I go, yeah, well, I don't know.
Why? Okay to you.
Oh my gosh. So I said, well, my friend is trying to see if I could possibly get a fight over there. And he goes, but you're retired. And I go, from Shooto. I'm retired from Shooto because you guys have me fighting in America for $500 a fight or $1,000 a fight. I said, I'd like to fight in Japan still, but I'd like to fight for a bigger league and make some money. I mean, I'm at the pinnacle time of my career. Why can't I fight? Frank Shamrock's cross fighting. Boss Rutan's cross fighting. Guy Metzger's cross fighting. Ken Shamrock's cross. Why can't I do the same thing? Those guys are now making money with their fighting, and here I'm supposed to sit here with Japan getting, paid whatever. I mean, each pay was my first fight, Kusayanagi was $1,200. When I won the belt, I think I got $2,200 or $1,800.
Did they let you keep the belt?
They took I had 2 belts. They took 1 belt back.
Okay.
They let me keep 1 belt, and they took the other one back.
That's
Cheap
cheap.
dates. When they go, do you want to buy the other belt? And I go, I have to buy it. They go, yeah, it's $500 or $1,000. And I go, it's no big deal to me. I mean, if you guys want your belt back that bad, just take it back. I got the original light heavyweight belt. So
why?
Little mention there.
that's how low. That's why, like, the MMA stuff it really hurt my heart because I want to continue to fight. I want to fight. I was supposed to fight in the Philippines, the platinum fighting. I was supposed to fight in Cage Rage. They wanted me to fight Babalu. I trained Babalu. And it was just like one thing after another. I wanted to fight in Bodog. We were talking about a 3-fight deal for Bodog, and that fell through. I literally had like 7 fights fall through after I fought Jeff Ford for HD net fights.
All right. Well, here, we started this conversation, or this portion of the conversation, with inflated records. Why do you think Rickson, obviously somebody you know quite well, and Sakuraba, or Rickson and Gokor, why did those fights never take place?
I don't know. I called Rickson one time and asked him who he'd like to fight. He said Mark Coleman or Mark Kerr. I was like, wow.
Coleman said yes to that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't know why it never happened. I think it's because of the money wasn't good enough. That's why. That's why Rickson went to Japan. I hooked him up with his fights in Japan. I asked him 3 years in a row, and I said, Rickson, would you like to fight in Japan? He goes, how much? I go, 15 and 15. He goes, not enough. So next year, I go, they want you to still fight in Japan. They're still interested. Would you like to fight in Japan? He goes, how much? I go, 30 and 30. He goes, not enough. So the next year, the third year, the final year, they said, try to get Rickson. We will offer 50 and 50. So he said, let's have a meeting. So we went to Cheesecake Factory with Yuri Nakamura, Hiromi, his wife, and then Kim and Rickson. And we went to the Cheesecake Factory in the marina, and we sat and talked about Rickson fighting in Japan, fighting the tournament and winning. And he was saying, after I win this first tournament, I'm going to want double the money. They go, well, yeah, you would deserve that. So that's what happened. He fought that first tournament and he won, and that was like 100,000. And then he fought again, and it was 100 to fight and 100 to win. So it was 200,000. And then he wanted to fight again, but Shooto didn't have that kind of money, and the only money that you could find would have to be a big league fight, because they have the ties to the money. I'm not going to say anything other than that. Right?
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys all know.
You had mentioned Mark Coleman, okay? So,
yeah.
I am only here as a conduit of information. I am not saying this, but I am saying what was told to me, because we've had Mark on the program.
Yeah.
The Hammer House theory in regards to Rickson, one, they respect him, okay, for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously. And it plays into Rickson's skill set, Mark's wrestling. They said Yuki Nakai fought Gilbert Gordeau, loses his eye in that fight.
Yep.
Then he fights a guy for another 12 or 14, maybe even 15 minutes, where he got the dog shit beat out of him for about 15 minutes.
Yep.
Yuki Nakai has made 145 pounds, and now he goes into the finals with Rickson, and it takes him almost 10 minutes to take out a 145-pound guy with one eye that had the shit beat out of him for about 20 minutes between the two fights.
Well, do you know what Rickson said? He told me that when he fought Yuki Nakai, he felt so bad about his eye that he didn't want to punch him. He just wanted to use jiu-jitsu.
Either way, I mean, his takedowns weren't too good in that fight, getting him Nikai down to the ground. So
Well, he was
Coleman,
surprised he had such a good guard. He was surprised that he re-guarded again, because usually when Rickson passes, he re-guarded. So he's like, oh, he's got a good guard. So he said also.
I can only tell you what was told to me when they asked about Rickson. It's if you put a 145-pound guy in the ring with Mark with that type of mileage on him, anything over a minute and a half is like call it an L. Like that's their forethought. Obviously, the fight never took place.
Yeah, that would have been. How come Mark never fought Royce either? Did he?
No. No.
He was. Well, same with Don Fry. Both tough guys.
Well, Fry, especially with Bitech, that was incredible. You know, and it's also you got to think here. Let's play devil's advocate. What Coleman is showing up to a Gracie fight? Is it the 2000 Grand Prix Mark Coleman, or is it like the who he fought the kickboxer? Come on,
Gilbert Vale?
No, not Gilbert Vale. Miguel, come on.
Bronco.
Rory Smith. Is it the Rory Smith Mark Coleman, or is it the Pride Grand Prix Mark Coleman? Because
it's Mark Kerr that fought Bronco. Yeah.
It's like you never knew what Mark Coleman was going to show up. So like, I mean, there's wild cards on both sides. It's a fight that I definitely would have wanted to see.
Wow. Yeah, I called him and I said, hey, who would you like to fight that's at the top right now? And he said, he kept mentioning Mark Coleman. And I was like, wow. And I said, what about Mark Kerr? He goes, either one would be fine.
Now, let me ask you, Mark, when I think of, especially the era there, legends and stuff, we've talked about a lot of them. You're one of them, especially the technique legends and things like that.
For sure.
Thanks, guys.
Who do you look at among that crop of people, like the John Peretti called himself a guru, Gene LeBell, Dan Inosanto, the Gracies, the Machados? Like, who taught you the most? Like, where would you, like, give us a little bit of a rating or an idea?
Well, probably the most mentored I've been was from 100% from Guru Dan Inosanto.
You represented him like on your walkouts quite often.
Yeah, well, so I was always training there. I mean, I got most of my fight stuff from the Inosanto Academy with Yuri Nakamura. And we had fight practice every day. So we used to spar five days a week. And then I also had Royce, then I had Rickson, then I had Higgin Machado, and then I had Rico Ciparelli. A lot of people don't know.
That's one of Miguel's favorites.
My personal private coach for over 8 years was Rico Ciparelli. I traded catch wrestling for wrestling from him. And that changed my life. I also used to spar with Rob Kamen and train with Lucia Riker for Dutch Muay Thai.
Oh, okay, but you were ahead of Rico in regards to learning curve.
Well, Rico,
Ciparelli.
He was an established wrestler, so I didn't know how great of a wrestler he was until we had a drunken night in Hermosa Beach, and I tried to take him down in his house. When we went back to his house, I go, hey, I'm going to go to bed. Is it okay if I sleep here? And he goes, yeah, you should probably sleep. I go, thanks. And then I shot a double, and I woke up with rug burns all over my face. I kept shooting on him.
The thing with Ciparelli is guys such as yourself, the forefathers, the people that laid the foundation that the house is built on top of, all of you guys just hold him in such high regard. Miguel as well. Miguel, in my opinion, fits into that category as well. Ciparelli's got a school in California, but it's like, how does a guy like that not constantly producing top talent? It's like you don't see his gym often.
He did. And then when guys started defecting, he got fed up and he said, I'm just going to train underprivileged kids that have no money. And I'm going to do a nonprofit organization and train kids only. He goes, I'm done with athletes. He goes, I trained one guy, one of my heavyweights tried to hurt me the other day. He goes, I kicked him to the curb. I had 2 other guys that are under contract with me, and they defected on their contract and they went to Japan and fought on their own without me while they're under contract.
Were they from Oregon?
So he had, yeah, I mean, the Raw team. I mean, he had the Raw team. Yeah, he had a Frank Trigg, Vladimir Matyshenko, Fernando Vasconcelos. He had Matt Lindland, Randy Couture,
Ivan Salivary, Chael Sonnen,
Tom Erickson. I don't think he managed Ivan Salivary. I think that Ivan was Matt Hume's guy.
I think he would show up over there. You might be right. You are correct.
Yeah, he was Matt Hume's guy.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It's interesting how that all played out. And we're doing like Kevin Randleman tributes because it's the past 6-year anniversary of his passing. I'm waiting to ask, one of the most shocking things in regards to like fandom sitting on this couch and turning on the TV is Kevin Randleman fighting Tom Erickson. Like they're friends. They train together. Like why? Right. Like
that was Brazil. That was in Brazil.
It was in Brazil. Yeah. Yeah.
I commentated that fight.
Yeah, and it was
it's cool.
You know what's funny?
Go ahead.
They asked me to commentate that fight, Rico did, and they put me on with a radio announcer from LA. Mm-hmm. And when they said action, I froze. I completely froze. So they go get Erik a 6-pack of Corona. So they made me drink 2 beers to loosen up, and woo, that was good to go. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know what happened. I literally froze up, and it's amazing what a couple beers could do.
Did you ever roll with Igor Zinoviev?
I hung out with them. I have a picture of him and I.
What was that experience like?
He was great. He worked in a sauna, right? That's why he was always ripped and in shape. He worked in a Russian sauna.
Yeah, do you know what he did after that for work?
Was he a bouncer at a strip club?
And then what?
Bill collector?
He was Jeffrey Epstein's personal bodyguard.
Holy shit.
Yes.
Whoa.
There's a crazy reporter, somehow got his phone number, called him up, records the conversation. And I talked to the reporter because the reporter's like, I need to know about this guy. This is like, I don't know, right after the story broke. And on the audio recording, he's like, you're calling me for information. I don't think you understand the position you're putting yourself in. He's like, I'm not even talking about me. The people that you're talking about are of levels that you cannot wrap your head around. And that's some heavy shit, man. Yeah.
So were they trying to interrogate you?
No, I had the reporter calling me because he was shitting his pants. Trying to figure out if he was like legit or whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, he's every bit of what you think he might be.
I don't think Jeffrey Epstein, I don't think he died. To be honest, I think he's still alive. I think they faked it. I think they used Hillary's brother because he looked a lot like him. When he died, they used his body.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean,
tell me that's not a conspiracy theory.
That's a nice one. No, I like.
We just had Pat Miletich on, so I mean, you guys might think about getting together in regards to your theories.
Is Pat a conspiracy guy?
Oh my God,
Pat's good. Yeah,
that's exciting. Well, some of it's like I went down the rabbit hole the same way during COVID. What are we going to do? Sit and watch horrible movies, or are you going to actually start reading about stuff? And that was when all the information was being leaked out. So I was like following threads on my phone. Man, it was the most exciting. I couldn't believe it. I was going down these, and I was sharing it with a lot of people. And a a lot of people actually thought I started going crazy. And then I realized that most of the people, when they started doing the research, they said, oh my gosh, you're actually right. But all the people that had these information up, they had them stored in these Facebook files that were just accessible with special codes. And they erased everything on everybody. I couldn't believe it.
Let's talk about some of the people that worked out with yourself. Josh Barnett, Hector Lombard. There is a legendary story, obviously you've told it in the past, about how those two pretty much fist fought for about 90 minutes.
Well, 30.
We had Hector on. He claims Josh quit. But who knows?
Yeah. So it's a 5-minute match, and they were in small gloves, and they just wanted to throw hands, and Hector always wanted to be a boxer. So he stood in a front stance the whole time and went toe-to-toe with Josh, and they were throwing for 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, when there was a little bit of blood, it continued. The 5-minute round just kept going. So I just go, all right, everyone switch partners. Josh and Hector just keep going. And they just stayed in each other's face and went. It was a 30-minute boxing round, 30 straight minutes. And I went over and grabbed the mop and started mopping up because I don't remember if it was just Josh's nose that was bleeding or if Hector had a little blood trickle too. Josh needed to get his nose cauterized because once he gets hit, he just would always bleed a lot. That was just normal. Anyways, as far as anyone quitting, I don't remember because I was trying to get them to stop. Yeah, and I know it was over 30 minutes of straight, 30-minute match of straight boxing.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat there too. I wouldn't get in between those two.
Oh, no, it was. These guys were banging. They were like, I'm like, wow, you guys are really getting it today. Like, okay. I mean, you could go hard or you could go not quite so hard, but even Babalu said that when he sparred with Hector liked to go hard all the time. So I think he said it was more of a war with Hector every day because Hector really liked to go hard. And Babalu goes, I don't mind doing that. He goes, but I don't like to do that every day. And I think this way I told Hector, he always had problems sleeping. And I thought because he banged so hard all the time, he could have had an ongoing concussion. But it wasn't Hector getting hit. It was him hitting everyone else.
Yeah.
All right. So we do these
heavy hands.
Erik, we do these deep dives where we go through the beginnings of people's careers. In essence, for sure, it's a gold mine. You're going to get somebody get ripped off by a promoter, a scumbag manager, a horrible decision, and it affects people in different ways. When Hector fought in Australia, which is when he defected from Cuba, that country was too small for him. Like, people were trying to kill him. They broke into his house. They shot his dogs.
Well, I never was told any of that stuff.
The people that I believe that broke into his house and killed his dogs, at the end of our interview with him, we do like a list of people we're going through. I threw 2 names in there that are the people that probably did it. And he's just like, nah, they're cool. They're cool. I don't want no problems. I don't want no problems. It's like,
was it
like 2 months later, I'm getting mad texts. And it's not sitting right with me. And I'm like, oh, Hector, man, you got to go back there. You got to go handle your business. He's a hothead, man.
I think where he was on the Gold Coast, I think the Banditos were very big there. And it could have been someone from that area or something like that. Because they were big at the Gold Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, he talked about robbing one of them and taking their chain. I mean, it was nuts. Absolutely crazy. I mean, Hector's an intense individual. How was he in your gym?
First of all, he's a judoka and an unbelievable athlete. So I immediately, and then he's told me right off the bat when he came in, he said, I love leg locks. And I go, well, I guess we will hit it off pretty good because, you want to learn leg locks, you love leg locks, you're a judoka. I did judo. I trained judo, and you're an Olympian. And he came in from Henderson's. He was training with Dan Henderson. And then he just showed up at my gym one day. And it was nice because his style was more of a catch wrestling style than it was a jiu-jitsu style until I watched him in gi class, and he was just choking everybody. And I was like, top level judo right there. Because his gi attacks, his collar attacks were so strong because of judo. And his throwing, it was like flash. It was like a lightning flash speed. His foot sweeps and all of his stuff that he did. So he was an amazing athlete. We hung out a lot. I felt kind of like a father figure to him, but he got mad because I would leave on the weekends. And then when I go away on the weekends to do a seminar, nobody would show up to my gym. And I didn't realize that he's in the gym 7 days a week or six days a week. Like, he lives in the gym. And a lot of guys don't live in the gym. Not like him.
He's so alpha. Yeah. That's
why he's as good as he is, because, he lived in the gym. And he said, when you leave, all your guys leave too. They don't come around until Monday. And I was apologizing. I didn't know what to do. And then I walked in one day, and him and Josh were already on the mat rolling, and Josh was laying on top of him. And I was like, oh, you guys started early. And then Josh was laying on top of him. They're talking to each other. And Hector's like, get off me, man. Get off me. He goes, oh, you like to go hard, do you? And I just shook my head and I go, kids. and I walked in the office, just like, how brothers are. They're just talking. And I just
let them figure it out.
Yeah, I didn't think that there was actually a problem. But apparently Josh was holding him down and wouldn't let him get up. And he wanted to stand up. And he said, no, you would like to go hard? And so he did that. And Hector got so offended. He made a phone call the next day, and 2 days later, he grabbed his shit, packed up, and just took off to Florida. He goes, he was talking to a manager at American Top Team, and I go, are you actually packing your bags and going to American Top Team and fighting for them now? And he goes, yeah. And I go, why? He goes, well, just what happened. Because of what just happened. He was so offended at him and Josh's excursion that he just grabbed his shit and took off. It was sad for me because I like to learn judo. I like to learn all the little nuances and things that he was teaching. I could call out any throw and he could hit it in a second, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think when he was in Bellator, he was arguably the best guy in the world when he was their champion. Wow. Yeah. And who knows how old he is?
Remember Brian Ebersole?
Of course, we've had him on. Yeah.
Him and Hector had a major because Brian was like one of the top fighters out of Australia in MMA at that time, right?
Yep.
And then him and Hector,
out of Southern Illinois.
Yeah. Weird. What was he doing?
Australia.
Weird.
What's funny is I think he had I don't know if it was officially a work fight, but he did a fight with Shannon Rich that he wound up getting suspended in the States, didn't make the Ultimate Fighter TV show and took off for Australia. I think that's the story with Ebersole.
Yeah.
Wow. What I wanted to ask you though is you're talking about Josh Barnett. Barnett comes from Matt Hume. How was that transition? Because you and Hume, we look at them as rivals and stuff. And also, how does that philosophy? Because Hume, Aaron Riley had gone to Hume and a couple of guys, and they tell you that Hume picks a time and he kicks your ass in the gym. Like, he's the dominant guy. And Josh has some of that reputation where, they're mean in the gym. Like, how does that translate into your world?
Well, so Forrest Griffin and Todd Duffy, I didn't know, but they were going to come out and train with me. And then when they found out that Josh, they told me this later on, they said, well, we didn't know that Josh was still training with you, and we didn't want to. We thought that if we were to come there, that he would try to hurt us, and we all have fight careers, so we can't afford to get hurt. So the big guy Pee Wee from
Dave Herman.
Yeah, Dave Herman. He came and trained with Josh for a while. He came out from Hendo's gym, and so he came in a little bit, and then just some of the guys, because Josh would beat people up, and a lot of guys just because they had fights. We had Shane Delisario. He was coming in for a while. We had Rampage. Josh and Rampage played a lot, so they got along pretty good. So it wasn't a bunch of wars. John Marsh came in and dislocated his rib. Vladdy came in a little bit and sparred with Josh. It was just hard to get people to come in because they knew that Josh would beat a lot of people up. And a lot of guys don't. And I told Josh, I said, if you break your toys, you're going to have nothing to play with. So you kind of have to look out for these guys too. You know, you train with them, don't train on them. But Josh's whole idea was to go hard. And we had Vinny Megalis and Tommy Lawler. Those guys came in for a while. We had Bruno Palistra, who was a Pan Am World's champion.
You had mentioned Dave Herman.
Yeah.
How was he in the gym and outside of the gym? Because
he seemed like a nice guy. I didn't really get to know him on a personal level. He would just show up. He was pretty cordial. He'd get in there and get his rounds in, and then he would leave.
We've been trying to track him down for an interview. We can't find him to save our lives, man. We've been trying. Wow. He's got an interesting story.
I think Hendo might know where he's at.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can look up Hendo too, but I wanted to ask you about John Peretti. Did you ever get a chance to roll with him and stuff like that? Because Peretti's one of those guys that he's a mysterious guy from that era, and he was also like, you know, an alien, kind of ahead of his time.
Under Gene LeBell. I never got to roll with him. He got into sport spearfishing.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah. I read his book. So he was talking about that and how he actually was talking about his kids catching fish too and stuff. So yeah, he's big on that. He's from Long Island.
Well, when you do that, you spear a fish underwater, it attracts sharks also. So you gotta make sure you don't get towed by a shark.
Yeah,
if you don't want to lose your gun. But no, I never got a chance. He was into acting also. He was in Gangs of New York, and he got a bunch of little parts here and there. And then he was a commentator for the UFC for a little while then.
Yeah, and he matchmade for them for
matchmade. He was an interesting matchmaker where he didn't matchmake to build like a big fight to kind of come together. He matchmade to try to get people beat.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Like his matchmaking style was much different than most. Like if you were under his skin, or if you wanted to try to prove you were wrong, he really worked overtime to try to get you beat, even if the fight didn't make any sense on paper. Yeah,
that's not really a matchmaker's job. It's just to get a good fight, not put someone over.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
great.
Miguel, that's a 2-hour mark. We've taken up a ton of time of
Miguel.
We consider a living legend.
Well, thank you guys. Miguel, remember at Abu Dhabi when Jeff Munson ripped his pants off?
Yeah, in Brazil. I was going to say, you did the Abu Dhabi 2003 in Brazil.
I was there.
And you were there, man. That was one of those naked protests of Jeff Munson. And he almost gave Marcelo Garcia a heart attack, man.
I have to say, the funny thing was he went against Saulo Ribeiro, and then they jumped on the phone to see. They're like, okay, they called the Sheikh. Who won? Who's the match between? And then they're like, let's give it to Saulo Ribeiro. Let's give it to the Brazilian. And then when they got off the phone, they raised Saulo's hand, and he He ran over, grabbed all of his clothes and whipped them all over the floor. And he ran out. He had red, white, and blue tights. And he just got done beating Shanji. And Shanji's student was laughing and pointing at Jeff Munson as he was walking up and screaming. And Jeff took his pants off and he goes, boom. And they were wet, soggy, red, white, and blue tights. And it landed just like this, right on Saulo Ribeiro's student's face that was laughing at him.
Man.
It landed like that. Do you know that I tore my hip in my first match with Shanji? And they asked me, Daryl Nair asked me to compete the next day in the absolute. And I was supposed to go against Bitonio and Saulo. And I said, I tore my hip. I could barely walk. Is it possible that I give my slot to somebody that I think that's going to win the whole thing? And they go, yeah. So I went downstairs to the bar and I go, hey, Dean Lister, do you want to compete tomorrow? I know you went against Shanji today and you didn't score any points. I went against Shanji. I only scored 2 points, but they asked me to compete tomorrow. They didn't ask you to compete tomorrow? He goes, no. And I said, would you like to take my slot? I can't compete. I tore my hip. And
did
then,
you know Lister? Like, what was?
Yeah.
How did you know? Did you feel like he was that good?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. So when he was standing there, on the day of his matches, I looked right at him and he had literally a white bubble around him. And on the outside of the white bubble was gold, just like your background right now. And I saw white gold all around him. And I said, hey, Dean, come here. I need to talk to you. It was right after Eddie beat
Hoyler.
Hoyler. And him and Joe Rogan were screaming. And I walked in the next room and I go, hey, Dean, I want to say something to you real quick. I looked right at him. I go, you have gold all around you. You're going to beat everybody. Today, you're going to beat everybody. So he beat Bitonio, Kakareko, and then he beat Saulo. And he won the whole thing.
Yeah, that was.
But it was weird that I saw gold all around him.
Have you ever microdosed?
I have, yes.
Have you macrodosed?
No. Macro's big?
Yeah, 5 grams or more.
I can't imagine. My friend said he almost stopped breathing. But he was watching these things hiding behind the trees.
Yeah, it's something you should do. Yeah, I mean, it's not something you play with. It's definitely not something
all
you
the
play
elementals. Have you guys macrodosed?
Yeah, I'm sober. Like, I haven't had a sip of alcohol since I was 18. But about six months ago, I did it. And it felt like a 15-year career in law enforcement. It felt like it took all of just like that bullshit away and allowed me to be like a normal human being again without being a dick. So yeah, I'm really glad I did it. My daughter, I mean, she's young. I'm thinking in the next few years, I'm going to have her do it too. She lost her mother. So, I'm thinking about doing it. I'm just thinking about it. It allowed me to kind of release some of my trauma, and I'm considering it for other people in my life that also had issues.
It helps with PTSD.
Oh, big time.
I have so many guys that are soldiers that have PTSD, and they fix themselves with chaga, which is like
yes, it's a fungus that grows on a birch tree that is extinct in China, and it is so expensive.
He got it from Russia.
Yeah, and I found some the other day actually.
So I tried that. It's like a derivative of DMT, and I'm not sure.
Tea.
Mine wasn't. Mine was just a black powder.
And you made it into a tea, correct?
Maybe it's called changa or chaga.
Chaga is a powder that you make into a tea that's found on a birch tree.
Oh, okay. So it's probably maybe different then, because this came from Russia.
Okay.
Changa, and it allowed me to meet my guardian angel.
Okay.
As soon as he goes, you should have somebody with you. And I just got done working in the garage, and I go, I'm going to try that changa or chaga or whatever it is. Chaga. So anyways, all you have to do is smoke it. So I just took one big hit, and then it went Dolby surround sound like the movie theaters.
Yeah. You saw like
then,
little triangles and the little.
No, I didn't see sacred geometry. All I hear is, "Go lay down. We need to speak to you." So I laid down on my couch, and I was laying on my couch for a half hour, and this lady or my guide would not stop talking, and she just told me everything about me. Everything. And I was like, what a peaceful, I was just laying there going, amazing. Just like
spiritual. Yeah.
If you don't ever try that, something like that, everyone, that's why I think DMT they make it illegal because it's the God part.
It create world peace is what it would do. Yeah.
Yeah. Because everyone would really realize who we are.
Yeah.
What we really are. Miguel, have you microdosed or macrodosed?
Yeah, I
Miguel followed the Grateful Dead for a long time.
I used to travel around with 25 pounds of mushrooms.
What? Wow. So you had some pretty good experiences?
Right around 1988, when you were training with Rickson, I was training with
taking fistfuls of hallucinogenics.
Right.
So Eric, will you do seminars? When's the next time you're coming through Chicago?
Oh, let's see. Chicago, I should be there somewhere around maybe June time.
I'm going to shoot you a text. I'm going to take you out, my man. I really appreciate it.
That'd be
Miguel,
great.
this guy's giving us almost 2.5 hours.
Well, thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You asked a lot of questions that people have never asked me.
Oh, that
That's
makes us feel very good. That's what we try to do, man. Because if we have a golden opportunity in this modern age to like really document this, like the retrospective stuff. Like it's, and we're lucky that most of the guys are still with us. Still, we've lost a few. But this is the time. We got to do it. We got to do it. And you are an absolute, like Mike said, a foundational piece of MMA.
Eric, we have mentioned you in our podcast probably about a dozen times, you and Matt Hume, and me and Miguel about 4 months ago were like, because, you got a podcast. Like, you've got to hone your skill, refine it, go over it, fight with each other, and then just kind of, okay, well, this is just how it goes. About 4 months ago, Miguel and I were like, dude, we're ready. We're ready for the big guys. So, you're one of them. You were absolutely on that list. We wanted to make sure our system was, fine-tuned before we brought somebody like you into it.
I really appreciate it. And I haven't heard from, ever since I stopped training Josh, I haven't heard from Matt. I've never heard from him again.
It's a shame. Well, sometimes life happens.
Well, I just figured maybe that common thread isn't there anymore. I know he was traveling. He's got a family and stuff. And I sent a text to Todd Bjornethun. Do you know they stopped Todd from fighting early in his fight career because they said he was Hep C positive.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And
that's
then
what got
they tested him again, and he didn't have it. It was a false test. Usually when you get a test,
who has that same issue?
You should get a second opinion, right?
For sure, yeah.
Well, I, for one, believe that the medical industry has all of our best interests at stake. They want us all healthy and only on medication until we're no longer sick. They are our overlords and really care for us. That's what I think.
Well, Mike, we did it. Another one in the books. Another legend in the books. We got Erik Paulson done, and we had a great time doing it. I think Eric did too.
And there was a couple compliments given to us that, I look at Erik Paulson kind of like the Manny Stewart of MMA. Like, he's a genius. He's brilliant. If you listen to the Nick Thompson interview, we've got about 15 minutes just talking about how much respect all of us have for him and why. And first compliment, at the end, he says, man, in my entire career, nobody's ever asked me these questions. whenever I personally hear that, like, dude, it's just, I did my job. You know what I mean? It's the highest compliment that I can get, like as somebody that kind of gathers the information and distributes it throughout the interview. And the other thing was Miguel, Bodog. I know it made you uncomfortable talking about it. It hurt you. But dude, what he said about Bodog in regards to finally he was going to get the payday, do you think he ever got one?
No, I think that's one of the tragedies of that, that shipwreck kind of thing, is that there are a lot of plans in the works, a lot of things like that. Because if you look at it, 3 fights for the amount of money that was mentioned, it's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, and
he was gonna have to earn it too. Like he wasn't gonna be given to him.
I'd like to have transitioned and get some of that knowledge as a talking head and as a commentator and stuff. And I thought having him around. See, and the other part of it is with a guy like that, if you're able to give him a decent raise, something that if he's talking about it 15 years later, I think I did my job in that he was going to come to that fight very motivated. And that's what I don't want. I didn't want a guy at the end of his career who was going to come in and be like, let me grab some paychecks or, let me, whatever it is. I wanted to make it worth his while so that he would feel like he could get up for another performance. I think that's important. I think it's very hard. It happens with fighters. I think, sometimes they get a big payday and then they got to take a step back and they really do have to adjust their career because it's not always raises. So I think, I'm so sad for Erik.
Okay, well, here we go. What I took from that is, one, you were upset, when you were having the conversation, probably brought back some hard memories. But like one, I think Eric Nicholson is the guy that took your place. For him to talk to Erik Paulson that way is so insulting. You know what I mean? Like he's not even an MMA guy, and it worked for M1 afterward. He's an administrative guy. I'm sure he did a great job. But you can't talk to people that way. But two, it's like, this is when you and I were working with each other. This is kind of like the beginnings of us of communicating. And it seemed as if you were trying to clean up somebody else's mess. And I don't mean to refer to, Erik Paulson's career as such, because it's not it, but the mess other promoters made, you have a very keen eye of understanding and kind of honing in on maybe certain injustices that fighters may have gone through. And I think you kind of, at that point, almost took it upon yourself to try to correct a series of wrongs that you had absolutely nothing to do with.
That's nice to say. And it would be nice to be like, the savior and the corrector of all errors in the world and stuff like that. But I think I was being very selfish in that, again, in the scope of things right now, most undercard guys in the UFC take home 25 grand. Yeah, 25 grand if they win, with a sponsorship here and there and stuff like that. That's about still probably, and everybody says the UFC guys are underpaid. So I was getting a Mount Rushmore level guy for peanuts.
Okay, but
I think he was going to be very motivated in the style because everything you said, if I could get him to feel that, like this is the redemption, this is the correction of being wronged by Shooto all those years and not getting raises and getting $1,500 for getting $1,500 comes out to about $100 a minute to get your hair pulled by James Waring. It's not good. I mean, it's not great money, So
here's the real question.
If I could sell him on that, I've done my job.
Here's the real question that we have for you. Who was he replacing in the announcer's booth?
Oh, I don't know because there were a lot of roles. Like, no, I know that you want me to say, Jeff or Paul or something like that, but I was happy with the job they did. And
you were happy with Paul Lazenby being called champ?
Whatever. That got me in trouble behind the scenes. So, I don't have to like it, but we had a lot of talking head roles. Like Josh Barnett did talking heads for us. Phil Baroni did. Dennis Kang. And Erik, I think, fits right in with that. Like somebody who comes in and gives you like 30 seconds on a fighter before the fight. This guy's good at this, or I've seen him do this.
Paulson,
look
he
for
would
this.
be,
And he'd be legit at that, you know?
I think he'd be amazing at commentary. Just a color guy.
Well, the thing about Erik is, and I think it comes across in an interview, is he's a dude that is unique. He walks his own path. And there are times where he comes across as quirky or weird. And so I don't know if he's mainstream enough, but I think that he is like a nerd's fan choice. Like he's perfect for that.
Did you feel like you did you feel like you made like a really good friend throughout the interview?
Well, he's the last guy that I remember ever choking me. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think I knew him before. But it was good. It's good. But what you think, he was sharp too. Like his memory was really good. I didn't think I remembered numbers until he mentioned them. Like I knew that we had negotiated because see, the other part of it is he was with Josh, and Josh and us were sort of talking, but when I threw a number at Josh, he mentioned his girlfriend Shannon in the interview. Shannon, was like, "Oh no, we won't fight for that." And it was, he would fight for much less money than that afterwards. He would sit for a while and eventually he would have to do it, and he would fight for much less money than we were offering. But, getting his coach and making people happy in the business and stuff like that, all goes hand in hand. That's why it's a puzzle piece, and you just can't, just jump in and change course right away and expect to be successful. So
Miguel, the guy said, yeah, it was rolling with Royce Gracie in 1988. He was still a brown belt.
Yeah, that's why Mount Rushmore, and there's no doubt about it. And the thing
think about that.
And what I like about Erik is a guy, maybe he didn't make the money or anything like that, but you can't. He should be proud of everything he's done, his legacy and everything, and he's still doing it today. He's got his podcast. He's
the real deal, man.
His submission wrestling, his stuff, his catch wrestling stuff, his jiu-jitsu, doing seminars. He said he's going to be in Chicago in June and stuff. He's the real deal as far as a modern first line martial artist that we look at, like post-traditional martial artist.
What I like too, I was working 2 bartending jobs. I couldn't figure out how I was barely paying the rent. Well, you belong to 2 different gyms for $100 a month. You were doing privates twice a week. You know what I mean? Like the guy was so invested in mixed martial arts and just understanding that samurai way that, like most people are like, yeah, well, I kind of got to cut back on my privates or maybe just join one gym. Food was off of his list of things to do prior to losing his gym memberships. This guy's 110% the real deal, man.
Yeah, no, I couldn't be happier with reconnecting with him too, because I think he's a guy that, could, if he's forgotten, then that is like the hugest disservice to history.
It would hurt my feelings. So, yeah, it would hurt my feelings. Listen, I'm going to go to a seminar in Chicago, pay for it, and I'm not even going to roll. I'm just going to watch him. I'm going to watch him teach.
Yeah. If you started to roll, he might refund your money.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I'm just teasing than that.
Either way, ladies and gentlemen, please like, share, subscribe if you like content like this. We do not want a single penny coming out of your pocket. All we're asking for is a tip, and that is like, share, subscribe. Maybe even leave a review on iTunes. A couple more reviews came in. Very, very nice. 5 stars. We got guys like MMA Purist, Crowbar, Cade Swallows, Genghis Khan. Those people are pushing our content across message boards. And we're seeing that, and we greatly, greatly appreciate it. So, when gentlemen like that do things as such, it allows us to grow. So thank you.
Yep. And thank you to Erik Paulson, guys, and enjoy.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.